Welcome back, everybody, to Blacktop Bandits, which is basically the channel of my harebrained idea to start a motorcycle shop after I have kind of been forced out of what I've been doing for 2 decades. This episode is about my first build, not my first build ever, but my first build as a bike shop. And I'm kind of bringing in, 5 or 6 other builds that I've done into this one, but this is really my first official bike shop build. Originally I bought this bobber, it's a CX500 from a guy locally, and if you're like me and you have the disease, you're always watching the papers, you're looking at the listings all the time. And I just bought this because I happened to cross it, and the guy only wanted like 150 bucks at the time. It was a basket case, came in a box. So originally I bought the bike as just a side project. If you're like me, you're always looking at the listings, and I'm always looking at CX500s because this is like my 5th or 6th one. And they're a great bike to work on. They're real easy to customize and change the frame and swap out tanks, etc. So I just bought this as something to piddle around with back when I was doing other completely different things. But since I already had it, it seemed like a good place to start. And the guy I got it from threw it in with a bunch of other parts. It had already had some stuff done to it. To start with, the rear of the frame was chopped away already. So the area where the rear axle mounts naturally was gone. They had done a little bit of cutting on the front of the frame to rake the front forks out, and it wasn't finished. The place where the seat mounts was completely gone. All the rear suspension and the places where those mount, of course, were gone. The lighting and all that had been messed with, and some of it unnecessarily so. So I had to go back in when I put the lighting that I wanted to put in and redo that. And of course, the most significant thing was the battery mounts in the rear part of the frame. If you guys are familiar with CXs, that area was completely gone. When I first got the bike, I was pretty much committed to having to do a bobber, and I didn't want to jump in too deep with some of the crazy ideas that I have swimming around in my head. So I went with something more traditional, something that I've seen a lot of guys do. And that was really just kind of a bobber, rat rod, unfinished on purpose kind of a look. Matte finish, pinstripes. I wanted a base black, red wheels, white walls, just kind of that traditional bobber chopper look. That way I wasn't getting in over my head too quickly. At the time I bought this bike, I had a steady job, had a steady income, but I hadn't really bought this as a project to start a bike shop with. So there's been kind of a learning curve with it, and kind of a make it up as you go situation. So the initial challenge we ran into was with the battery box. It either had to go under the seat, or it had to be mounted up underneath the frame where the actual original exhaust went. And I made an entire box, mounted it in there, fit it to the eyelets and the mounting points that were originally already under the frame. The problem with that was to get into removing and getting rid of the original exhaust, I had to remove the H-pipe out of the equation, and I would have had to go into the carburetor and change a lot of the orifices and the jets inside the carburetor to compensate for the back pressure. And that might not be the right technical term, but the back pressure that's created by the original exhaust. So after realizing all that, and I had already built the battery box, I just decided to scrap that. What I did find was a lithium ion battery, smaller, lighter, and I made it a really small, easy battery box for that, and it mounts right up under the seat. So that's what we ended up going with, and it was a much easier way to fix that. If you've ever bought a basket case, or a car or bike, anything that's in that condition, you are buying someone else's halfway conceived vision of what that vehicle should be. And in this case, not only did the previous owner get into it, but even talking to him when I bought it from him, he didn't really even have a clear vision of what he was trying to accomplish in the end. So I had to kind of figure those things out as I went. One of the other things that we ran into was, since the suspension was completely removed, he had originally tried to come up with the idea of having an independent moving suspension, a lot like some of the new bikes do, and they have a monoshock kind of in the center of that independent. I want to say it's like a rear fork that allows the rear wheel to move up and down. The issue with that was the airbox goes there. Of course, like I said, the battery goes there. The air cleaners went into that area. So all of that had to be completely moved out of the way. And then not to mention all of the electrical that goes along with the starter, the battery, all the electronics that go through that area. There's the magneto, etc., all had to be relocated. And that didn't work with the monoshock design that he had originally conceptualized. That was all an improvisation. We actually ended up going with 2 shocks in order to keep it low and tight, which is what the whole bobber idea was about. We went with 2 monoshocks that are really stiff, but also allowed us to mount it very, very low and close to the wheel. One of the other issues was also these CXs come with a very large original airbox. And we of course went with the typical cones, air cleaners that most people use, but with the 2 shocks coming into where the seat stay is, or the main part of the frame that comes down, we mounted them into that, and then down to the runners that go to each side of the drive wheel. There was no room, not even for the cones to go there. So we actually had to duct the cones down away from the shocks, and then they would fit kind of tight next to the bike. Otherwise, I found my legs were hitting. So there's a lot of little tiny improvisation or troubleshooting to make everything kind of fit where it needed to go. Also adopted the issue where he cut the frame in a few places and actually stretched it so that the rake on the forks was a little bit more, but he hadn't finished any of that. It had just been cut, so it was kind of a little bit of an accordion situation with that. So we actually ended up mounting a saddle, like an upside down saddle, a piece of steel, welded all of those, welded the saddle over it as a kind of a clamshell around it. And that actually remedied the problem of the potential weakness, of course, because not only did it create more leverage this way, it also didn't, according to the original designers, move the shocks, up as it was impacting down the road. So to absorb a lot of that and to be able to be rigid and strong enough, we wanted to reinforce that area just to be safe. I eventually get the bike to a point where I'm riding it pretty much every weekend. It's running great, and I list it. Thinking, okay, I'm gonna move it along, use that to fund my next project. Well, the day comes, I have a buyer I've been talking with, he loves the bike, comes over with cash, and I roll it out, start it up for him, and lo and behold, it's kind of the T, the crossover that feeds both carbs with fuel. Well, one side, the O-ring, I guess, cracked, whatever, and started leaking. Right after that, one of the bowl seals, the gaskets on one of the bowls, started leaking as well. While he's here and we're running it, and he's about to take it out for a spin. And I told him, hey, I just don't feel good about sending you off with a bike that's got issues. And I turned them loose. That was, after all I had done and as long as I'd been working on it, that was a really tough punch to the gut, because I really thought I was making progress and I was ready to go through that threshold of starting my next project. So where am I at now? I actually put the kit in the carbs, fixed those leaks, but for whatever reason, when I did that, I had a flow issue to my right side carb. And even now, there seemed to be a flow issue with petcock. I think I got that taken care of, but it's flowing into my right carb, but it won't keep up with the demand, it seems. So it basically slowly will fill up. It'll run until it empties that bowl, and then it dies out. Tries to keep running on one cylinder, but obviously it won't run well on that. And that's kind of the ghost that I'm dealing with now. I've had that bowl off several times. Check the flow valve to make sure the flow is good. It's not set too low to shut off too early. I've checked the jets. Like I said, I've checked the line, make sure it's flowing from the petcock. I'm really not sure at this point. I just need to keep scratching away at it. I had an old mentor that used to say, quiet, calm deliberation untangles every knot. And I have needed that saying, I can't tell you how many times with this build. Where that puts me right now is I need to get this carb issue squared away and get this bike sold. Anybody who has any ideas with the carburetor or fuel delivery problem that I'm having, or have had a problem similar to mine, go ahead and comment. Let me know. I'm still trying to figure it out, and maybe you have thought of something I haven't. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it. If you're following me on this journey and you enjoy watching me fumble and stumble forward, be sure to like and subscribe, and I appreciate your support.